Hello there. Good morning. This is Brian Hitzelberger, your online art appreciation instructor, and this is week 4 of our course. So this week, a couple assignments have opened up and are available for you to complete. The first is our second written critique paper, which is due Saturday, June 20th at 5 p.m. Saturday, June 20th, 5 p.m. The format of this written critique paper is exactly the same as the first. So, the resources that were provided for you for successful completion of the first paper, those are still available and useful for this assignment. So, do revisit them if need be. And as always, if you would like feedback on your paper, be sure and get in touch with me before the due date, and I'm happy to work with you over email or another method. Maybe we can set up something through Zoom in order to work with you on the paper if you have any questions or concerns about a draft. So your second written critique paper will be due Saturday, June 20th at 5 p.m. The other assignment that's a little bit different this week is your midterm exam. Your midterm exam is composed of 15 questions. They're either multiple choice or true-false. All of the questions come directly out of the readings and or PowerPoints. So you'll want to be sure to have familiarized yourself and spent time with the readings and PowerPoints before starting on the midterm exam. The midterm exam covers all of the chapters that we've looked at up to this week, including the chapters for this week. Okay, so basically the first half of the textbook that introduces the purposes of art and then also goes through individual media and talks about specifics of each individual medium. That's the material that's covered on the midterm exam. But it's not exhaustive. There's only 15 questions, multiple choice, true, false. The midterm exam is open book. It is untimed. And you can actually take it at any point. In fact, it's going to be available to be taken up until the very last day of this class. Okay, so the day before our final paper is due is going to be the last possible moment that you can take the midterm exam. However, I recommend taking it sooner rather than later because the second half of the course material is not going to be on the midterm exam, and the further away we get from it, that you might actually start to kind of forget or feel more distance. So might consider taking it when you're fresh. Again, it's open book, it's untimed, you can take it at any point, but everybody only gets one attempt, right? So you can only attempt it once. In the past, I've noticed that students have generally needed about 30 minutes to take the exam on average. Some people do it faster, some people take longer. I recommend not starting it unless you have 30 minutes that you can devote to the midterm exam, because on average that's about how much people need. And you're not able to start it, stop it, and then come back later. Like once you sort of start it, I think you have to stay on the page and work on it until it's completed. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Open book, untimed, you can do it at any point, but you only have one attempt allotted. Okay. Now the discussion topic for this week is actually art and the everyday, and I really like this topic. It's a little bit different than the other ones because it actually asks us to look at our immediate surroundings and start to think of them a little bit differently, which I consider to be one of the great things that art can do, is actually make the familiar strange again. And I think that that is really something that kind of happens with this question. So the readings that you covered this week, we looked at some media and materials that maybe you're not used to thinking of as art. We looked at architecture, we look at various craft media, textiles, jewelry, things like that. And probably along the way, you realize like, oh, I actually either own examples of this or I have a lot of familiarity with something like this. We tend to think of art as, objects that are very rarefied and like preserved in museums, and like, they might be paintings or marble sculptures, things that are very impressive, things that are very expensive, things that are very large, things that we don't really interact with on a day-to-day basis. But the reality is art is actually all around us because everything that did not grow out of the ground was made by somebody. And everything that we use in our day-to-day lives was made with a specific purpose in mind. And in making it, that artist had to make creative decisions. That artist or designer had to make creative decisions. So what I'd like for you to do this week is to actually examine your surroundings and find an object that after spending time with the readings this week, you now see, oh, this is actually a work of art that was creatively made by an artist or designer. Um, it could be your living space itself. I'm sitting in front of this like wonderful glassed-in porch, which is a really interesting work of architecture and really allows me to sort of be outdoors while also being indoors and uses like really interesting curved glass to do it. But I'm also wearing like my favorite striped shirt, which I think I actually wore in last week's video too, which don't hold that against me. Um, and this too was an object that was designed by somebody. I'd like you to put that object on screen if you can, right? If you can actually show us this thing that you own that's in your home that you now think of as an art object, put that on screen so that we can see it and talk about it. Talk about how it works, talk about what it's made out of, talk about what principles of design it uses, what visual elements of art it uses. Does it have contrast? How do the colors work? And this is the most important part. Put yourself in the mind of the designer. Ask yourself, why did this person design this the way that they did? Why did they make the creative decisions that they did? And really think through this. I think that this is actually a wonderful experiment, and it really allows you to sort of think creatively about something that maybe you actually use and touch every day, but you've never really thought of before. A couple of notes. I find that the best responses to this question, sometimes people just take a piece of art off their wall, like a painting or a drawing or a poster or something, and they say, "Oh, here's my piece of art." That's not really what I'm looking for. Like a small sculpture on a shelf or a painting or a photograph on the wall. I mean, that's kind of its own thing. Like I'm thinking of an object or a space, something that we don't normally think of as a work of art, and I'm asking you to look at it from the perspective of a creative designer or a creative person, and ask yourself why it was designed the way that it was designed. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I think the best responses to this question, people make really good videos about kitchen gadgets because I think there's a lot of creative thinking that goes into like kitchen gadgetry. People speak about clothing, they speak about jewelry. Jewelry is a big one. Jewelry is something that we use and that we wear, and it's kind of like a little sculpture that we wear on our bodies. And jewelry often has like a very specific intention behind it. So take a look around, spend some time with this question, and as usual, your videos are going to be due by 5 p.m. on Friday, and your responses will be due by 5 p.m. on Saturday. Thank you so much, and I look forward to reviewing your videos.